Confirmation bias, a really sneaky little problem that affects lots of traders, and not only traders, it impacts people throughout their entire lives. So in this video, what I'm going to do is explain to you what confirmation bias is, and then I'm going to give you some tips on how to overcome it when you are trading. So confirmation bias basically stems from the propensity for the human mind to look for facts, figures, whatever it may be that line up with our pre-existing beliefs. Now you can see confirmation bias on pretty much any Facebook post that you go onto. So if you go onto a Facebook post, there's always people arguing, and they're always arguing for one side of the argument or the other side, and they are completely certain of their own argument. And what they do is they post things that line up with their beliefs. The other side does the exact same thing, and neither side is willing to compromise. It doesn't matter what this side says, because this side will never change their mind. And it doesn't matter what this side says, because this side will never change their mind. And that is because they are stuck in confirmation bias. So what is that going to look like when you are trading? So think back to a couple of different scenarios. The first one is you look at a trade setup, you convince yourself it's a terrible trade setup, I don't want to take this trade setup, it doesn't look right. You say, okay, I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to ignore it. And then the trade works out absolutely perfectly. After it completes, you say, that was a good entry. Now, worse than that, for me personally anyway, is when you are looking at a trade, you take the trade, and then as soon as you enter that trade, or as soon as the trade starts to move against you a little bit, you start to get that wave of panic and annoyance at yourself. Because you start thinking, you know what, this was not a good trade entry. But what you've done is you've convinced yourself, whilst you're looking at the chart, that it is a good trade entry because you're using confirmation bias. And then that disappears the instant you enter the trade, and usually what happens is you end up having a loss. It's absolutely one of the core problems for traders. It happens over and over and over again. Now, I tend to find even if you've been trading for a long time, it can start to come back. It starts to come back for me if I have lots of wins in a row. If I start to have big runs of winners, I really need to focus on my confirmation bias. Otherwise, I start to take dumbass trades and I start to have unnecessary losses. And then usually I have the loss and it sort of resets me. But my aim is to go for as long as possible, fighting back that confirmation bias. So how do you do it? Well, there's a couple of different ways. When you are looking at your setup, let's say you're looking at your trade setup and you're convincing yourself it's a good trade. What tends to happen is you start to get this tunnel vision and you start to just focus straight in on the charts. And there's all these little things going off in your head. Maybe, oh, but what about this? But what about that? But you start to push them aside and you just start to focus in. You're already setting up your order. Maybe as you're setting up your order, the market's doing something else, the candle's changing, and really that's one of the things that should invalidate your entry, but it doesn't matter because you are on this train now and it's racing along the tracks and it's getting toward you taking the trade. And eventually you hit the end of the trade, it triggers in, it moves against you, and then suddenly everything clears and you think, oh, what have I done? This is not a good setup. So how do you avoid it? Well, the first thing is you approach the trade differently. If you're looking at the trade and you're thinking, okay, this is looking like an entry, you start off by looking at the negatives. What is the things that are going against this trade? Now, you can do that yourself. You can also, if you've got someone in the house with you, before you get into a trade, you can have them help. The reason I'm saying that is because I told my girlfriend about confirmation bias about a year ago, because she's learning a little bit about trading. The more she sort of sees me doing it, the more she's picking up, and she's starting to enjoy the process of learning. So I was teaching her about confirmation bias. Now what happens, every time I'm setting up a trade, she is there beside me saying, what are the negatives for this trade? Are you sure about this trade? What about this? What about that? What about this? So I've literally got another voice in my ear helping me with confirmation bias now. But the main thing you're doing is you're focusing on the negatives. It's very easy to get into that sort of tight stomach, you know, you're really focused and you're thinking, oh, I need to get this trade because if I miss it, I'm maybe going to miss some money. Instead, you should be approaching it in terms of what are the negatives. Okay, yes, it's testing my support and resistance level. Yes, it's looking like an entry candle, but maybe this swing point's too close. Maybe at the start of the day I decided this isn't really a very good level to buy or sell from. Maybe you're looking at it and you're thinking, there's news release coming and it's a little bit close to my entry. Maybe it's too late in the day. You don't usually trade at this time of day. Whatever it may be, you have to add them up, stack them up. And then when you start to stack up the negatives, it becomes a little bit easier to then compare it to the positives, because you've already got both sides of the argument then. You're not just looking at the positives. You're not just allowing your confirmation bias to drag you into this trade. So you've got your negatives and then you run through the positives and then you weigh it up. Okay, well, I've got these things going against the trade, I've got these things going for the trade. Is this still a good entry? Maybe it's yes, maybe it's no, but it's allowing you to make a decision with the facts on the table. It's really, really important. Your trading plan should already tell you, if it's got this and this, I don't want to take this entry. And by forcing yourself to run through the checklist, it's forcing yourself to not get sucked into that sort of ignorance of the other side of the argument. So think back to your Facebook posts. When people are certain of their arguments, they're not interested in the facts coming from the other side. They just want to force forward their argument, and that's it. By forcing yourself to look at both sides, you're doing it a little bit differently. You're weighing up the arguments and then coming to a good decision. And what it will do is it will help you start to pick better trades. When you get into the trade, if it moves against you, instead of feeling awful, you'll start to say to yourself, I've already weighed this up. I already know this is a good entry. If I lose this trade, it's just part of my trading plan. And I can feel not good about it because it doesn't feel good losing, but I can accept the loss. If you've watched the other videos about the Connect 4, you can put one of the yellow counters into your Connect 4, even if you have a loss. Now, the other side of the coin is when you are convincing yourself it's not a trade. This is just as bad in the long term. A lot of people sort of, they think about this in the wrong way. They think about, okay, I missed a really good trade, but at least I didn't jump into it and it was a loss. It's not the right way to think about it. If you are skipping good trades, you are hammering your probabilities with trading. Every good trade you miss takes away a winning trade from your month's results. And what's it doing? It's leaving the losses in its place. You're still going to have the losses, but all you're doing is you're chipping away at the wins. Chipping away at the wins because you're convincing yourself this isn't a good trade. I really shouldn't take this. So again, confirmation bias. It's not a good trade. I don't want to take it. Oh, but look at this, it's telling me it's not a good trade. You have to also run through the positives. What are the reasons for this trade? This was a key buy zone for me today. It's a really good level of support and resistance. I've been watching it for weeks. It's a signal candle that I look for. It's got a really good distance to where I think potentially the next level of resistance is. It's giving me really good potential risk to reward. So what's holding me out of this trade? I'm feeling a little bit nervous. I don't really want to take the trade. I've already had a good trade yesterday. Maybe I don't need another good trade. And by forcing yourself to look at it, you can start to say, but these aren't really solid reasons. This is a good entry, and it can force you through. It can force you to change your confirmation bias and start to look at the facts and start to make educated trading decisions. And what it will do is it will stop you from taking or stop you from skipping good trades. Really, really important that you look at both sides of the trade before you get in, because confirmation bias can decimate you as a trader, and unless you're willing to face the problem, you're never really going to learn. So what I found over time, everything I sort of bring to you guys is things that I've learned personally through trading, through a lot of reading, a lot of research, but also through the traders who I have watched go from beginner to consistently profitable. The ones that I am regularly in contact with. There's obviously, I'm not in contact with every single person. But the ones who I'm in contact with regularly, who have done that step from beginner to consistently profitable, it's the same exact things that I went through that they go through. Confirmation bias is a really, really important one. It's in all walks of life, but also trading. It's not the intelligent people who succeed. It's the people who are willing to adapt, they're willing to change, and they're willing to learn. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are, how expertly you can learn a trading plan. It comes down to starting to deal with your own issues, your own mental issues, your own psychology, because in every walk of life, it's It's your psychology and it's your personality that allows you to take the next step. Unless you're in school just sitting exams, when it starts coming time to implement things, it comes down to you personally. How you can take the information you've learned and then how you can implement it successfully under stress, under pressure, especially as a trader. So confirmation bias is something I really suggest you look into. Hopefully those tips are going to help you make better decisions when you are trading. As always, guys, I hope this video was helpful. I hope you're all having a good trading week, a good trading February, a good start to 2019. I'm James Orr, and thank you.